My coming out story is not so much me coming out, but being found out.
So I did a trial run and I told a couple of my best friends and I said, this is what's going on. I'm dating someone, happens to be a woman.
I didn't officially come out until I had a girlfriend.
I went over to this guy's house for an evening. We were alone, and even without today's resources, they tracked me down. And I'm on the street saying goodbye with a kiss. And these headlights come right at me as I'm staring straight at them, beaming with happiness. And slowly my face just fell. That's my parents' home. That's them.
I ended up calling my parents, got them on the phone together, told them. In my head, it was a much bigger deal than it actually was for them, because again, I think they suspected that it was going to be coming.
I think when I told my friends in high school, a lot of them just didn't believe it.
I really only told my closest friends at first, and then I didn't feel bad about telling the people at school, because I go to a school that's really diverse and has a large LGBT community. But I still haven't come out to anyone in my family or really anyone who's close to my family.
So my older brother is gay and he came out when he was 18. I was still kind of battling with that understanding. I guess when I was 14 is when I finally came out officially. It didn't go over so well, having an older gay brother. They didn't want two gay sons, so it was kind of overwhelming for them at the beginning, but they have come around.
And I told my mom first, and then I had to tell my dad, and then I had to go home and tell my dad and tell my grandparents, and it was very hard. It was harder to tell my grandparents. Their reaction was my grandfather disowned me. So it was painful for me.
Recent ex pretty quickly after I moved down here, and I didn't know what it was at first. I remember seeing her and I thought I wanted to be her best friend and hang out with her all the time, and I did not realize that I had like this humongous crush on her. I dated a couple of guys out after college, but it didn't feel right. It was just so I didn't have to answer any more questions because I didn't know how I was going to.
For me, I actually had to go through relationships with males to realize that, at some point I told my family, I said, I think I chose to be heterosexual so you could accept me. I think early on I felt something different, didn't understand why.
Yeah, it was just something I already knew about myself, All my friends were looking in one direction, I was looking in another.
I didn't discover my sexuality until a couple years ago, and for a while I was just very determined that I was straight, and I remember I got a pixie cut in 8th grade, and everyone told me that meant I was a lesbian.
I did everything I could. I followed all the rules. I went to the counseling. But again, didn't take, the antibiotics didn't work, Dad. It just doesn't happen that way. I had always taken my faith seriously. I loved my church. I loved growing up in my church. It's a miracle I'm still there, because most people like me make the choice one or the other. You don't want to think that you're wrong, especially if you're happy in church and you feel like God's casting you down. So.
You like pumpkin? Bubba, them can try to.
And I was in college, I found, I would say, my faith in, I got saved again. I felt like I was living my life for a lot of people and not for myself. My aunt is Catholic and she loves us. She just, she just is open arms, open heart, open mind. I think a lot of it was a relationship with my aunt that helped me kind of come to terms too with that it was okay for me to be who I am, even though my family was making things kind of difficult for me.
I went to a conservative Christian school. Nothing wrong with that. Their views on the LGBT community, not great. Didn't know that necessarily before I went there. I don't like hiding that aspect of me. And I don't want to be able to do that. I don't want to do that in a place where I go and worship. Like, I feel like I should just be able to show up. And that's kind of hard because you don't know how different churches are going to receive you, especially if you're new to that particular church and it's not one that you just grew up with. I will say I have gone to churches literally all across the U.S. because I've lived in a lot of different places. And what is okay in one church isn't always necessarily okay in another, even if they're the same sect, like even if it's the same thing. I've had good home churches where I feel like I was comfortable, like in Arkansas, in Eureka Springs, it's this liberal little town. But there was this church I went to every Sunday and I worshiped along drag queens and there's gay people and transgender people and everyone was just so welcoming of everybody. And I loved that church. And it was a church that you could go into and you felt at home immediately crossing the threshold.
I was in the Methodist church, and so they were very accepting. I found that church, Hope Arise United Methodist, and I started going to their church, and I hated having that conversation with them the first day. Hi, I'm Melissa, I'm a guest. I'm gay, is it okay for me to come here? I started going to church at least 3 times a week, doing other things, Bible studies and stuff, and really digging deep and really soul searching who I was. Our pastor there, Pastor Reese, was actually the one that did our premarital counseling.
We had been looking for a church together as a family. There was ones that we went to where we were welcome, but there's a difference between welcome and a warm welcome. Like Methodist, open hearts, open minds. And I asked him, how open-hearted, how open-minded are you? I want to come to this church, or I want to bring my child. Will you welcome me within the community? And it's really hard because you just want to walk into a church. You expect it's going to be a house of worship and growth together, and to learn and walk in God's word. But you've got to lead with, are we welcome?
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to see our family actually enjoying that part of our life, because we need it. We definitely need God in our journey.
I was brought up Catholic, and hearing all of the stories in Catholicism and the teachings were very conflicting. So I was quick to leave that church, and I got baptized into the Baptist church. That lasted just a short while, and I kind of lost faith at that point. I didn't find it again until 12 years ago. And even then, I was still trying to figure out what I was looking for and find out what faith meant to me. I stumbled upon Madison Square Presbyterian Church, which first introduced me to the possibility of having faith and being open about my sexuality. After that church, I did go through a few other churches, but it wasn't until 2 years ago when I walked into this church, Woodlawn Point, Living Church at Woodlawn Point, that I really started taking it even more seriously, so much so that now I sit on the board and I have an influence on a lot of the everyday going-ons here. I remember when my nephew was being confirmed in the Catholic Church. I sat at the church, and my older nephew is gay as well. And at the church, I was just kind of overwhelmed because the bishop is telling him that his role in life is to be a husband and provide for his wife, and he's telling the women that their role in life is to bear children and to keep a home. And I was just flabbergasted by that. A lot of other churches will say that they accept you, but that doesn't do enough for you. Just saying you can come here is one thing, but come here and let us love you and let us appreciate you for who you are, how you are, is something completely different.
I grew up going to a Catholic school, and around 2nd grade is when I got really, really serious about religion. I think I've gotten less serious about it since then, but I think I still do take my faith pretty seriously, and I would consider myself a very philosophical person. I went to my cousin's baptism a few months ago, and at the end, the priest was talking about a group of nuns who were selling books outside the church, And he specifically mentioned ways to deal with your child if they think they're LGBT, because it's a fad on the internet now and people think it's cool.
They took me down to the altar for an altar call in front of the entire congregation, with hands laid on me from the entire pastoral staff, to have the demons exorcised out of me. And how humiliating is that, you know, in high school, and the whole staff and people know what it's for. And in those extreme Assembly of God churches, it wasn't the same as where I am now. I actually feel more welcome in my church every week than with my father today. I'm 50 years old, and I asked him 2 years ago, finally, if he approved of me. I still don't have his approval. I get more of that from my pastor than talking to my dad. I am completely received in that church. In the past, the other churches I wasn't, this is always when I was in school, college, and professional school, and I would just find a church in whatever city I was in just to show up. And I get nothing but smiles, nothing but welcome, we're glad you're here. Oh, my faith has always been there. I just had a hard time reconciling it for a while. You have to ask yourself at one point, did God make a mistake when he made me? And the answer has to be no. You don't either, I'm all out wrong and I feel things I'm never supposed to feel, or God made a mistake. What kind of relationship is that if you believe that your higher power made a mistake? It's not God. So I was exactly who he wanted me to be, in my opinion.
I didn't want to hide her because I felt like by hiding, that meant that it was something that I should be ashamed of or that it was wrong, and I don't believe either one of those things. This man was reading a journal that he wrote as a kid, and he was gay and he was struggling with it. He grew up in the faith. And he remembered saying, and he came to his own epiphany, and he was like, I was praying for God to fix me, but then I realized I wasn't broken.
I don't think I had any conflict with it. I kind of walk with an idea of I love who I am, I know who I am, and then in that is my faith.
So the church that I've been going to since I was little is a Marianist church, and I don't know if all Marianist churches are like this one, but I do know that they tend to be very liberal and very accepting. And so I was raised with the idea that Catholic means universal, it means all are welcome and all are accepted. And I think I was a bit bewildered when I first learned that there were Catholics who didn't hold those same core beliefs. So I think to me, I always thought that if your Catholicism doesn't accept LGBT, then you're sort of doing it wrong.
I choose to believe that, as we're told, we're made in the image of God. And why would God make us this way if there was something wrong? And I've always held on to the idea that everything happens for a reason. And when I fell into this church, when I fell into church and religion period, trying to wrap my head around how I can tie in my sexuality to religion was tough in the very beginning, but through a better understanding of the teachings, it's allowed me to grow, and I don't necessarily find them so different and so far apart as I did when I was younger.
The part that was hardest to come to terms with is the concept of marriage, because, and I'm all for that, you know, sex should be reserved for a married couple. Well, what hope did we have? We weren't allowed to get married.
But that's where I had problems. Had vendors drop out when they realized what kind of service it was going to be, that it was two women.
When I reached out to Pastor Reese from Hope Arise, he was very encouraging of, you know, love and marriage, but he had to say, you know, unfortunately, you know, we can't do the ceremony. I can't, you know, preside over it because of United Methodist Church has not made a stance on this yet.
So I mentioned my first girlfriend was also raised in a Catholic school, but I don't think we really talked about religion much.
No one that I've ever dated has really shared my faith. My ex did not. She supported me in questioning and seeking out answers because she realized that that was something that was important to me.
I I don't want to have a partner that does not attend my church. That's too big for me, too important.
My life is going to be defined by the changes that I make in this world and the effect I have on a lot of people's lives. Now, as a stylist, I'm behind the chair. When I have clients calling me, you know, during their hardships, when they're calling me to tell me that their child came out as gay or lesbian or trans, or you know, they're calling me to invite me to their wedding or to talk to me about their marriage, I realize that I am having an effect on people's lives.
We are exactly how he meant to create us, and there's so many different facets of humanity, and just because you are different than me, different than this person, doesn't mean anybody is wrong.
At some point in my life, I was scared of who I was, and today I'm not.
I realized I didn't have to choose one or the other. I could be both things, be a Christian and be a gay man.
And there's a reason why people in the LGBTQ community call each other a family. It's because we are a family, and we understand that it's not always easy, but being able to be who you are and live authentically and live in your truth is so powerful. There's hope and things are changing.
I think if you're really looking for religion and you have a yearning and a calling, you need to be patient and you need to open yourself up to the idea that there are people that are loving and caring for you and that want the best for you. So often it's easy for us to give up. We just have to be persistent.
You know, regardless of us being a gay couple, we're two people trying to raise wonderful kids in the world.
Being gay is what I like most about myself. I can say that, finally. If there was a straight pill, I wouldn't take it.
I've been, you know, integrated, you know, easily into the church day to day. The leadership has been, you know, loving and kind, but you will always have someone somewhere that will look at you some way, and you just know. But the idea is to love yourself, walk on. So,
Amen.